Welcome back to Boxing in Wales, the YouTube show that brings you closer to grassroots amateur boxing in Wales. We are delighted to bring our first show of 2023 to you, and we're taking a trip to the Welsh Novice Championships held earlier in the year in January. And we start our senior finals with Bailey Edwards from Pencoed Boxing Club against Ethan Williams from Pontyclun Boxing Club.
Boxing in the blue corner, representing Pontyclun, ABC, Ethan Williams. Edwards in the red corner, Williams in the blue corner, walking with the guiding letters, 3.2 rounds. A split decision in the red corner.
And there we have it, a split decision win for Bailey Edwards from Pencoed Boxing Club. It's another champion in the gym for them. I'm joined by the magic man, Mr. Richie Garner. Richie, we love amateur boxing, but we love novice championships as well, don't we? Because this is really where careers start.
Absolutely, yes. Paves the way, and obviously you get a lot of lads out there who want to achieve something rapidly, and this is a great platform for them.
And what did you make of Bailey Edwards' win there?
Aggression going forward. He kept the ring off well. Ethan Williams trying to work off the jab, more of a back foot fighter, sometimes fighting with his hands a bit low. Some great straight punches, and obviously Edwards trying to come around the back and catch him with those hooks more than anything else. But you know, it depends what you fancy with regard to what you look for in boxing. A lot of Welsh judges do look for the aggressive style as opposed to the counter punching or back foot boxer. So you're always going to be up against it. And I feel that if you are a counter puncher or a back foot boxer, you've got to do a little bit more to win that fight. But nevertheless, a closely contested decision, and it was great to see him embrace at the end.
But Edwards and Williams, there wasn't much between them. It was a split decision, obviously. But
yeah,
when Edwards was coming forward, it was quite calculated, wasn't it? Which you don't often see with novices. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't reckless. He knew what he wanted to do there.
Absolutely, like I said, he was cutting the ring off well. Williams had, a good style, and sometimes their feet got tangled a little bit, not too often, but you could see that Williams was struggling a little bit to get out of the way of the very calculated attacks of Edwards. Like you said, the way he moved around the ring, the way he cut it off, absolutely fantastic work.
This is the first fight that we're going to look at from the Welsh Novice Championships. Looks like a fantastic crowd there, 2 rings as well. Great to see Welsh amateur boxing starting the year with a bang.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously they're very young men, they're very inexperienced, but it didn't really show in that contest.
In ring B, 57 kilo is between, in the red corner representing Tifa, ABC, Jimmy Foster. Boxers William McCormack and LOUIE. Other parts to the ring, please. Other parts to the ring, thank you.
A decision win for SHAFIUL MAMMAN there over Jay Foster from Diva Boxing Club. Richie, a title in the club for St Joseph East Amateur Boxing Club. What did you make of that fight?
Great fight. I like the way Foster moved, and MAMMAN, he was putting a lot of pressure on, and that was fantastic. However, a little bit unorthodox. He was trying to move side to side, but he fell into the trap of perhaps just shifting one way rather than the other. And when he was coming back, perhaps rather than that tick-tock movement, which can also be timed, if you've got the right fighter. But again, these are novices, so I would expect you to kind of have that tick-tock movement, make the opponent work. But he was sliding left, sliding left, sliding, never really coming back to the right, unless, of course, he was just bending that way, coming off that. So he had a lot of right hands. And fair play to Foster for, he obviously recognised that early doors and caught him with some lovely shots. Maybe even stiffened his legs in the first round with a lovely right hand over the top. But it just wasn't enough in the end, and MAMMAN came away with a decision.
MAMMAN never stopped coming forward. Even when he was open, he was willing to come through shots to land his own, and it seemed like that extra energy was maybe the difference in this fight.
Oh, absolutely. And ultimately, when you've got that energy and when you're pushing forward, obviously it can catch a judge's eyes, and that's clearly what's happened here. Yeah,
all that extra energy as well. You mentioned about the TikTok movement, where he was almost constantly doing it. How much of that is conscious, and how much of that is just a habit that he's got?
I mean, only seeing him on this occasion, it's difficult to say. A lot of fighters have that upper body movement. And of course, we're coming from an era where a lot of people look back, and I'm very sad to say it, the kind of guys that we, when we were young, and I say we, Dewi, but when we were young, the kind of guys that were around at the time, particularly in the Ingle gym, had the upper body movement. There were, Pele Reid, there's a name I've thrown into the mix that people haven't heard for a while, but obviously he came from a kickboxing background, very flexible.
Bit bigger than these guys.
Little bit bigger than these guys, yeah. Quite muscle bound, but nevertheless very flexible. And then of course you had Hamid, you had Nelson, and those sorts of guys had that upper body movement, that flexibility, trying to sway away from punches. And you find a lot of amateurs relate that style, and maybe that's what's happened here. People have their favourites, they have their heroes, and those are the kind of characters that attract people to boxing. And sometimes you can carry it off, and sometimes you can't. It'll make you a better boxer. Ultimately, you're following those guys, and if you've got the reflexes to carry it off, then it can be successful for you. But you've got to be a special kind of boxer to be hanging your chin up in the air like that, because sooner or later you're going to bump into somebody who's going to have that timing, just time it and put one on you. In
fairness to MAMMAN, though, I guess he's at that stage of his amateur career where he's not just figuring out what type of fighter he's going to become, he's also figuring out what type of fighter he's not going to become as well. So he'll have learned lessons from this experience. It was a competitive fight the whole way through. He did take some right hands, but we kind of seen him almost learn on the job there.
And at this level, you can make mistakes and you can get away with them. But it's not forever, is it?
No, that's true. That's true. But nonetheless, a champion of his country in the novice championships.
AKANDE. Boxing in the blue corner, representing Greece, ABC, AMRIT, SOORA. AKANDE in the red corner, SOORA in the blue. Junior 16 is between in the red corner, representing St Joseph East, ABC.
A decision win for AMRIT SOORA from Grange Amateur Boxing Club in Cardiff over a very good OLAMIDE AKANDE. What do you make of that fight, Richie?
AKANDE seemed a bit more measured to me. SOORA was very much up on his toes, and it seemed to me that AKANDE was trying to time him. When he was bouncing back and forth, you could see that AKANDE was looking to score, set up the big right. Well, not always the big right, because sometimes, as you pointed out when we were watching it, he was switch hitting. But he was looking for that big right, just a touch with the left. And this fight was just full of feints. But he was touching with the left and then looking for the right hand over the top all the time. And he was waiting for SOORA to come onto the front foot when he was bouncing back and forth so that he met him with that right hand. Nevertheless, as you said, both a bit of a chess match at times, but both very game, and SOORA obviously gets the result.
AKANDE, I thought, when he was switch hitting, it was consistent. It wasn't like sometimes you see, especially novice amateur boxers, they might throw their backhand, they step a bit too far, and then they'll just stand south. If they're orthodox, they'll stand southpaw, maybe for a couple of seconds. But he was switching southpaw quite naturally and staying there as well. Very
deliberate actions. It's obviously something he practices in the gym. It's obviously something he's very comfortable with, because even as a novice, he looked quite accomplished in the way that he did it. It was a sweet transition for guys at this level.
Two quality coaches in the corners as well. Carl Stevens with Apollo's Amateur Boxing Club, David White with Grange Amateur Boxing Club. What will they be telling these boys after this fight?
I actually spoke to David White recently, and they've got quite a collection of boys in Grange at the moment, and it's difficult to say. I mean, neither of them really did anything incredibly wrong. Perhaps Apollo's might be telling AKANDE that he needs to put his foot on the gas a little bit more, be a bit more aggressive, and perhaps be a bit more aggressive with the jab, because whilst we saw him setting up things with the jab, touching, looking for the big right or switch hitting, and trying to make things happen, at the same time I think he needs to be a bit more effective with those punches. It's no good perhaps 75% of the time trying to set something up. It doesn't always come off. Perhaps he just needs to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more effective. SOORA, perhaps he should sit down in his shots a little bit more. I realise it's the amateurs and they're always up on their toes and always bouncing. Nevertheless, what I would hope to see from SOORA maybe is just to plant his feet a little bit more, especially when he's throwing his shots.
Fantastic. Cool.
In the red corner, representing Pundit, ABC, KINSELLA. Boxing in the blue corner, representing Kansai, ABC, junior female 63 kilos is between. In the red corner, representing Wales, ABC, LOUIE. Boxing in the blue corner, representing ABC, Pundit. by a split decision. In the blue corner, Harrison.
A split decision win there for Aaron Harrison from Panside Amateur Boxing Club, pleasing his coach, former world champion Gavin Rees in the corner, but pushed all the way by Aaron Kinsella from Coed. Richie, your old amateur boxing, or one of your old amateur boxing clubs, right. Coed, and that was a sterling effort, I guess, from Kinsella there.
Yeah, I've been in training at Coed. Gary Lockett was there for a little bit as well. But yeah, Kinsella constantly going forward, constantly throwing punches. Maybe not the most intelligent pressure, but nevertheless pressure, constantly throwing. A little bit lazy with the jab sometimes. Two issues that if I was coaching him, I would try to get him out of the habit of obviously pushing out lazy and bringing it back slow. And sometimes when Harrison was coming forward, what you'd see him do is leave the left hand out a little bit, and Harrison was coming around and catching him with the right hand. And perhaps that's what's cost him the fight, because certainly both of us noticed some eye-catching right hands from Harrison.
Yeah, they were from Harrison. I think he found the range for it quite quickly, and although he was reversing a lot of the fight, he kind of got the rhythm of Kinsella's approach, I think. Yeah,
definitely. And Kinsella was coming forward a little bit square, a little bit recklessly, but nevertheless, game as hell, and you could see he was up for it. And genuinely a fight that I felt could have gone either way, and you wouldn't blame Kinsella for perhaps feeling aggrieved. That's not to say Harrison didn't deserve the verdict. Again, it depends where you look for. And Harrison was tight, he was compact. A lot of the shots that Kinsella threw, Harrison took on the gloves, he caught them, and obviously he came back with some good shots. And as you said, his timing and his spatial awareness, the distance, he had it perfect, and some of the right hands he caught Kinsella with were quite eye-catching.
Certainly so.
Boxing in the blue corner, representing by the Warriors, ABC, Oakley. Dewi in the red corner, Oakley in the blue corner, the referee is the 3 by 2 rounds. The Novice champion at 67 kg by a unanimous decision in the red corner, Solaiman.
A decision win for Solaiman Khan from Grange Amateur Boxing Club, their second champion of the evening, over Eifion Evans from Prize Fighter Amateur Boxing Club, with the Welsh legend Kevin Evans in the corner. Richie, we've seen Solaiman Khan a couple of times now on our shows. Yeah. He is always in electric, exciting fights, but this was one of his calmer fights that we've seen.
Yeah, you could see, I mean, you know, we've seen him previously, and I think he was quite aggressive. Perhaps, given the occasion, he was a little bit more settled and tried to be more reserved. Evans, a little bit ragged.
Look in the box, I think, wasn't it?
Evans was a little bit ragged, and he was trying to keep it tight and close. One thing I will say about Evans, I spoke to Kevin Evans, his coach, recently in respect of some of the boys he's got coming through and stuff like that. And one of the things that he said was his guys are really, really game and really fancy it. So it doesn't shock me that he's got guys going into the championships like this. Nevertheless, Grange, great club. We've discussed them before. Loads of champions coming through. I've been to that club. Obviously, I managed David White Jr. and I spent a lot of time in that club. And the club is absolutely heaving. Real talent, quite an underprivileged, deprived area with the greatest respect to people who live there. But nevertheless, it's a tough area, and that's represented in the gym. And Solomon Khan, one of the kids that's coming through and showing a lot of talent, showing a lot of bravery, but today showed something which perhaps we haven't seen before, which was a little bit more composure, which was needed against Evans, because in my experience, what you find is these kids who are a little bit ragged and are coming to have a real go and throwing punches from all angles, those punches can catch you out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, you find yourself buzzed and think, where did that come from? And it's because these lads sometimes throw from very awkward angles and can catch you because you're used to an orthodox style of boxing. And who knows how Evans will develop, but ultimately, I wouldn't, he's obviously a brave kid and willing to come and have a go.
I did feel like if we'd seen Solomon Khan maybe in his second or his third fight from, a couple of months ago, he probably would have been a lot more willing to engage recklessly in those moments. And you could almost see, if you go back and watch our previous episodes, you can almost see his development. He's making incremental steps and is becoming more polished in what he does. Yeah,
showing better footwork there, working behind the jab, and as you say, developing nicely. Evans showing plenty of guts, plenty of will, but ultimately not enough in the end. But I'm sure you'll take a lot from that.
And we wouldn't expect anything else from anyone who trains under Kevin Evans.
No, certainly not. He's a hard taskmaster. He expects his boys to perform, and he's got a gym up there which, as I say, is full of very game guys, and they're brave, they're willing to have a go, and they want these experiences, and that's absolutely fantastic. And what a coach to have behind you. I mean, can you have a coach who has had any more experience than Kevin Evans?
Certainly not in the amateurs. 3 times at the Commonwealth Games, a couple of times taking away medals as well. And everyone forgets, Great Britain has had fantastic success in the World Championships. Everyone forgets the first British boxer, I don't know if Kevin considers himself Welsh or British, but he's from the British Isles. First British boxer to win a medal at the World Championships was Kevin Evans.
Absolutely.
I think it might have been 1999 against Felix Savon from Cuba, and he took a bronze, and he was winning that fight in I think it was 4 2-minute rounds at the time. So we're talking a bona fide Welsh boxing legend when we talk about Kevin Evans. There are a lot of Welsh boxing legends. I'm sat next to one here, but there are levels to it as well, and Kevin Evans is towards the top.
Well, that's going to have to be edited out.
Is between, in the red corner representing All Saints ABC, PARRY GRIFFITHS. Boxing in the blue corner representing Squat ABC, ELLIOT.
decision win for Elliot Young Yadu over Corey Griffiths. Richie, a champion there for Splot. All Saints represented by Corey Griffiths, and just an extra bit of quality from Elliot over the 3 rounds.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's nice to see Splot amongst the medals because you know, they've got a good history there. It's a great little gym. You know, it isn't the type of gym that you walk into where you see all brand new equipment all over the place. It's, you know, again, one of those spit and sawdust gyms. Pat Marney used to be the principal trainer there. You know, lovely guy, steeped in history, that gym, and lots of characters that have been in and out of that gym. And obviously, he was the more controlled boxer. Griffiths, very game, liked to push forward, but not the most intelligent pressure. You could see that he was a little bit reckless, marauding forward. I mean, you've got to be brave to do that, and you've got to be strong to do that. But ultimately, when you come up against a boxer like Elliot, who can control things behind the jab and has pretty good footwork, then you're going to come unstuck. And unfortunately for Mr. Griffiths, that's what's happened. We
often see as well that, like, not to typecast every boxer that comes out of Splot, but they produce nice boxers, if you know what I mean. Like the likes of Jamie Evans, Andrew Selby would have been there once upon a time, thinking back to maybe 12 years ago. Christian Nagel had a great win in a senior final. And Elliot very much looks of that style, doesn't he? Where they can hit, they can hold their ground, but first and foremost, they can box.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when I was there, I was working at the time in Cardiff as a trainee solicitor, so it made sense for me. It was just down the road to go and train there. And the training regimen there is you know, it's hard. You know, it's really hard. It's a tough gym, but nevertheless, like you said, they teach those core boxing skills which are going to serve you well. And obviously, Elliot's used those to his best of his abilities, and he's come away with a good result.
That's a champion for them there in the amateurs. We've also seen a champion for them in the pros recently, Rashid Omar, alumni of or alumnus of Splot. So it's good times for the club. Absolutely, yeah. Great fight with McIntosh recently, and I will say that was a quite closely contested fight, and McIntosh did really well in respect of boxing on the back foot and trying to score with perhaps a little bit more precise punches. Omar tried to walk him down, walks through him, by far the more aggressive boxer. There were times when it was a little bit of a dirty fight, and sometimes you don't mind seeing that. It's not the type of thing where it wasn't dirty as in headbutts and elbows, but they were doing just enough to, you know, keep the fight going. That's right, yeah. Just staying on the right side of the referee, but nevertheless, points being taken for Omar. And it was a great fight, not unlike this one where you had two very contrasting styles. Griffiths marauding forward, Elliot boxing more on the back foot, being a little bit more cagey, working the jab. But even so, this time the boxer comes away with a decision rather than the more aggressive fighter such as we saw in the pros recently. And who knows what happens in the future? Maybe a rematch of both fights coming up sometime in 2023.
75 kilos between in the red corner representing prize fighter ABC, boxing in the blue corner representing Greens ABC, Henry March. Partner 13 in the ring, junior 70 kilos between in the red corner representing Welsh Novice ABC, LOUIE. Boxing in the blue corner representing
decision win for Henry Marsh, another one from Grange Amateur Boxing Club, over Tom Griffiths from Prize Fighter Amateur Boxing Club. Richie, that was a classic southpaw against orthodox encounter, and we saw, you know, it swung both ways throughout that.
Yeah, Griffiths trying to use that right jab, and in the initial round, what you saw was Marsh and Griffiths coming together, a little bit messy at times, both of them falling in with their shots on occasion. Griffiths trying to control it from the outside, but Marsh kind of got his measure as the rounds went on. And first round I was a bit disappointed because Marsh didn't seem to be getting his foot on the outside to bring the southpaw onto his right hand. He seemed to be following him a little bit. His foot was constantly coming onto the inside, which was giving Griffiths plenty of time to use his footwork to the best of his ability. But nevertheless, Marsh, he settled into the fight, and what I found then was as soon as he did get his foot on the outside and he was bringing Griffiths onto the right-hand side and he was getting his timing and distance right, then of course Griffiths found himself in a little bit of difficulties and ultimately lost the fight on points. Nevertheless, both boys had a good go, and it was very entertaining.
And we often see seasoned professionals struggle with that southpaw style, and given that Henry Marsh is a novice in the novice championships, it might even be the first time he's ever faced one. So, you know, taking that into consideration, he adapted quite well because he did kind of sort his feet out by the end of the fight. He was able to push Tom, you know, back to the ropes and keep him there for a bit longer than he was at first. Absolutely,
and he just wouldn't be denied, because there were times when Griffiths got off some lovely shots and was pinging shots into March's head as he was coming forward. And there were some fantastic shots, and you know, he snapped March's head back on one or two occasions, and you could see he was putting his punches together really, really well. Some lovely combinations. Nevertheless, like you said, and who knows, as we've said, we talked a lot about the experience in the corner. David White Senior, he may have gone back. David might have said to him, "This is what you need to do," and I hope that's the case, and that obviously we're seeing a young boxer here who goes back and listens to his corner, because there's nothing more frustrating as a coach than to be able to see what you need your fighter to do, have him come back to the corner, say, look, this is what you need to do, and then not have him use your experience to obviously settle down into the fight and get the win that you need. But knowing David White Senior, and knowing what a great advisor he is in the corner, I think perhaps that advice has been passed on, and March has taken that advice and moved forward, and he's got himself the victory.
And it's a hat-trick for the Grange.
Dewi In the blue corner, Thomas.
A derby in the Calzaghe gym in this fight. Oliver Thomas taking a decision win over his gym mate Jacob Parry. Richie, these two, I'm stealing your lines that you said just before we started, they've probably sparred hundreds of rounds together. And, you know, despite that, it was still an entertaining watch.
I would imagine for the Calzaghe Academy it was a difficult one.
Yeah, maybe for them.
To establish, obviously, who to cheer for, you know, whose corner to work. And somebody at the end of the day was going to be perhaps disadvantaged over the other boy. But nevertheless, it was still a great contest, and it was a bit of a mix of styles. I think that Oliver Thomas, you know, he got the decision. He did very well. However, a little bit square at times, and Parry was pinging some lovely shots down the pipe. And if he'd held his ground, been a bit more compact, and kept on shooting those shots through the middle, then perhaps he would have come away the winner. But Thomas, great applied pressure, always in his face, always working, and ultimately got the decision. Boxing
is full of cliches, but I do genuinely feel like there are no real losers in a fight like that, because there was nothing in it really, and there's plenty of positives for them both to take away.
You could see it at the end in their embrace, and both of them had obviously given everything that they had. Like you said, they've probably done it 1,000 times in the gym, but this time it just meant a little bit more.
Certainly does.
Between in the red corner representing St. Joseph's East, LOUIE Walters. Boxing in the blue corner representing Pundit, ABC, Joshua Mellor. Walters in the red corner. Ladies and gentlemen, start number 15 and the final bout of the 2023 Welsh Novice Championship Finals in Lane A. Youth, 57 years.
An exciting second round stoppage there for Joshua Mellor from Cardigan Amateur Boxing Club over Louis Walters from St. Joseph's. Richie, I don't know about you, but I thought that maybe could have been stopped after the first knockdown, but Walters, game as a badger, you know, really tried to get back into it.
Absolutely. Walters going back with his chin a little bit high. He's a very tall lad, and he's trying to work behind the jab. But sometimes when you're just a novice, or if you're me still now, you sometimes throw that jab and you throw it with your chin high. He's still doing that. He'll learn from that, hopefully. Maybe he'll watch this back. But as he was backing into the corner, again, trying to work off that jab, takes a couple of heavy shots. Mellor, by that point, marauding forward, very square, but not afraid to take Walters' shot. and unleashed a barrage. And there was one particular shot which catches him flush. It's bang on the button. And as he's going down, Walters takes a second one. You could see he was badly hurt in the corner. Nevertheless, as you say, really fancied it. So he's back up, he's on his feet. His legs still looked a little bit unsteady. And in the amateurs, sometimes you see referees stop fights at an early point. But he allowed this one to go on. Perhaps he could see that Walters really wanted it. And of course, he did his best. But Mellor, I'm not going to say he took his foot off the gas. If I was his coach, I'd probably be screaming for him to come forward and try to finish the fight. But he was very composed, took his time. Obviously, he knew he could come over the top of Walters' jab. He could get those hooks around the back, which he did. And he was quite clinical in the end. He really took his time and finished the fight in a very composed fashion.
When I say it could have ended after the first one, that's not to be unfair to the referee. You know, the referees and judges are volunteers, and this couldn't happen without them. But, you know, I agree with what you say. It didn't look like his legs were quite with him, even when he was pressing ahead. But I thought Mellor, what impressed me about his finishing was I think he knew it would be messier in the middle of the ring. So he just navigated Walters to the ropes, and all of the knockdowns came when he was along the ropes, stood tall, nowhere really to go left or right. Sometimes he was cornered, and that's, you know, whether it's conscious or not, that's impressive finishing instincts, isn't it?
He really put it on when it mattered. His footwork was quite good, and what he didn't do, although I think he was a little bit square and perhaps he could have been caught by a punch coming in, he wasn't too worried about that. I think he'd felt Walters' power and wasn't too concerned about it. But nevertheless, he was composed and he didn't fall in with his work. He threw those shots when obviously it was the right time, and he'd obviously steadied himself. And it was a performance which really, in finishing terms, was beyond a novice, I suppose. Yeah,
and it's a great time as well for Cardigan Amateur Boxing Club. Johan and Garen Croft obviously representing Team GB, winning medals left, right and centre. And I've spoken to them both recently, and they both say that there's a real appetite in their local area where it would usually be rugby. They're seeing their amateur boxing club, after their success, is full to the rafters, and there's talent coming through.
Yeah, when you've got that kind of talent in your gym, and people in the local area can see the type of attention that garners, I suppose that it's going to bring people into the gym, and that's absolutely fantastic. We've seen it here in Pontypool with the Gething family, and certainly I think that we're going to see that kicking on now in places like Splot, where they've got a long history, and certainly we're going to see it in Grange, who have been absolutely fantastic during the course of these championships.
And that was our first knockout of the show so far as well. We've got a couple more to come, and it certainly was an impressive one, wasn't it?
It was, and it's not often you see somebody so composed, scoring with those shots, with the referee, perhaps letting the fight go on a bit longer than you might expect for the amateurs. And that's not a criticism. I think sometimes you've got to give a fighter time to recover. And when Walters got to his feet, as you said, he didn't look steady on his feet. But when the referee asked him to come forward,
did everything he meant to do, though, didn't
absolutely.
he?
Gloves up, step forward, yeah, absolutely. And that's what the referees ask you to do. Lift your gloves, show me your gloves. And suddenly he looked very solid. And you wondered if he might make it through the round. But Mellor, not having too much respect for Walters' power, not having too much respect. Perhaps Walters has got to be a bit more spiteful with the jab to stop people like Mellor coming forward.
Yeah, and that body language as well. You could, although it was everything he was supposed to do, I think Mellor could read through it and see that, you know, the opportunity was still there for him, and he certainly did take it.
Number 16 in the ring B, 92 kilos between. In the red corner representing Dallas, ABC, John Parkinson. In the blue corner representing ABC. 92 kilo 2023 Welsh Novice Champion by a split decision. In the red corner.
A hard-fought decision win for Jack Parkinson over OGHENERUKEVWE OMONISA. Richie, that was really challenging for both boxers. They really pushed each other there.
Yeah, both of them had to go to the well for that. OMONISA boxing a little bit more on the back foot. Parkinson working behind quite long arms, nice long jab, and he was setting his shots up a little bit more. Both of them big lads. Really entertaining contest. Really enjoyed that.
The first round is so important in these 3-round amateur fights as well. I think Parkinson maybe have lost the first round, so he's done really well to gather himself and really work his way back into it.
Absolutely, and he's dragged himself back into that fight. I mean, maybe I'm being a bit unfair by suggesting he's dragged himself in as if it was all one-way traffic, because it wasn't. But he settled into the fight lovely. OMONISA, especially in the third round, perhaps looked a little bit in danger of maybe taking a count because Parkinson caught him with some lovely shots. He was on the ropes. Both of them were obviously fit lads, but quite gassed because it was a high-energy fight for big lads.
I know referee and judges might disagree with us, but I thought it was quite smart of OMONISA in that final round where you could see he'd expended a lot of energy and Parkinson was still coming for him just to hold him and turn him and kill the clock a little bit. And ultimately, you know, it hasn't worked in terms of winning the fight, but they're the type of lessons you learn in your novice championship fights that will serve you well in tougher moments later down the line.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, we've seen a few moments from these novice championships where people have perhaps shown experience beyond this level, and perhaps that was one of those moments. But Parkinson, nevertheless, a deserved winner, came away with it, and you know, really entertaining fight. I really enjoyed that one.
Down there is loving it.
The referee now is on the door for the third round. In the red corner, MALEKI.
And there we have it, the final fight from our novice championships. Ali Maleki from Cairo Amateur Boxing Club taking a third round stoppage over YODA from Roth Youth Amateur Boxing Club. Ali really impressed, I felt, in this fight. Richie kept his shape, and even when he was kept on guard by Amura, he stuck to the task.
Like you said, very compact style. Punches were very short, didn't wing his punches from the side. And of course, OMONISA, first round he was unravelling a little bit. Did well to hold it together though and came back. He was quite strong in the second round, I felt. Throwing a lot of hard punches, coming back a little bit. But ultimately, the referee could see he was hurt on occasion. And when he was being pushed to the ropes, he was being caught with some nice, nasty, leveraged punches. And it was just too much for him in the end. And perhaps the referee made the right decision because there were some pretty heavy blows being landed.
I think on first watch, I think people might think, why was that stopped? But I think the referee probably got a sense that he was getting a little bit weaker, sagging a little bit, and she can probably hear him breathing as well in those moments. She's the closest person in the ring. You know, although, like I say, on first viewing, it might seem premature, you can kind of understand it, I think, if you watch that fight back.
And at the end of the day, they're novices, and you don't want to put novices off boxing. You don't want to see them get too hurt and think, Christ, this is all a bit too much for me. I don't want to be taking this kind of punishment on a regular basis. And sometimes even a brave fighter needs protecting from themselves. And I'm certainly not saying that was the case here, but perhaps an appropriate stoppage given the level that these guys are fighting at and some of the shots that were being thrown, thudding shots, being caught on the ropes and just being worked up a little bit. But nevertheless, he stuck it out for as long as he could. No complaints at the end. You'll notice that he doesn't turn to the ref and start remonstrating that perhaps the stoppage was a little bit too soon himself.
That's always a sign, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And but nevertheless, game fighter, very, very brave. Came out for all 3 rounds, no complaints, and didn't look like he was really feeling sorry for himself. There was a moment where he was caught with a couple of punches, and he kind of did that novice thing where you just turn your shoulder a little bit, like perhaps you don't want it. But then came thundering back in the second round and unloaded some decent shots himself. So he should be proud of that performance because it takes a lot to come back from those heavy shots and then fire back and show that kind of resilience. So shouldn't be anything more than proud of that performance because it takes a lot to come back from being given counts and fire back and look for the stoppage yourself. Because the shots he was throwing, they were quite heavy shots. And when they landed, he landed some thudding shots himself. But, they're big boys and the decision was the right one by the referee, perhaps. We don't want to put anybody off this boxing game, especially at this very early level.
I completely agree. And congratulations to Ali Maleki and OMONISA YODA for their efforts there and all the stars of the future that we saw on throughout the whole novice championships. They're certainly making sure that Welsh boxing will be a force to be reckoned with in the future. To watch more of Welsh boxing in the future, come back to this channel. We'll be producing lots of regular content throughout 2023. We can't wait to show you what we've got planned. If you've got any great ideas that maybe you think we can help with, get in touch. We're open to new ideas. We want to do things differently. You can contact us on all the main social media channels, and we'll be absolutely thrilled to hear from you.
Thank you for all your support.